Thanks so much for joining us today on Learning for a Changing World. This is a joint FE News and NCFE live stream. Today we're talking about Never Too Late to Learn. My name is Gavin O'Meara. I'm the CEO and founder of FE News, and I'm joined by
Suzanne Slater. Hi, I'm the Commercial Director at NCFE.
And done many of these together, Suzanne. So everyone, thanks so much for joining us today.
Comfortable with it now.
Always. Today's a really interesting show. We're Never Too Late to Learn. I love our sort of series titles and stuff like that, and it's good timing. It's ONS has just come out around the labour market figures and highlights a bunch of stuff which we're going to be covering today, actually. But it's never been more important, I would say, than the time that we're in when we're looking at lifelong learning, the importance of what's happening in the world, the way the world of work is changing and speeding up, that we've got to be looking at different ways to encourage lifelong learning, basically, and how we sort of help adults with career changes. Got a really cool panel today. Got Mark Morrin from Lifelong Education Institute, who's going to be joining us from a policy and understand it from a sectorial side. Also got Sam going to be joining us, who's gone through career change themselves and what that means with the rough and tumble of life and how to actually practically do that, because it's one thing talking about it in sort of theory, is another thing actually what were those actual barriers that come across for an individual as well. So we've got kind of a cool panel today. So Suzanne, what would you say from your perspective are key drivers behind the growing needs for adults to retrain and upskill throughout their working lives, because working lives seem to be extending and stuff?
Absolutely, I agree with that, Gavin. I think it's really been driven by a combination of things, sort of demographic, economic, and technological change as well. I think, firstly, we're seeing people living and working much longer. So this idea that we've had previously of a single career for life, it just isn't that realistic anymore. Most people throughout their careers will change roles or even sectors, multiple times. I think as well that the sort of pace of transformation is accelerating massively. So, we've got entire sectors are evolving, particularly with digitalization and AI. So skills are becoming outdated, sort of more quickly than they used to, and new skills are more and more in demand. And I think thirdly, there's a sort of growing mismatch really between where jobs are growing and where people's existing skills sit. So, definitely visible across regions where local labour market demand is shifting rapidly. Local employers and their demands are shifting rapidly, and it's about those people who live in that locality being able to move forward with their skills needs. I think part of the challenge is that the system hasn't fully caught up, so it's still largely designed around early life education rather than supporting continuous reskilling across a kind of 50-year working life.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'd say, we talk about AI. It's generative AI is only 3 years old. AI is the 50s. Do you know what I mean? But like the rocket ship of like the change of what's happening with automation, it's had the countdown. It's still on the launch pad, and it's literally
Absolutely.
got. And I think also what's interesting is people coming back to education and skills. A lot of people may not have had the best experience at school. Do you know what I mean? Like we're seeing more and more with we're looking, stepping back a minute around SEND, neuro inclusion. A lot of people were missed on support they need. They don't think education and skills is for them. So there's a lot of mix in here as well, isn't there, around sort of the overcome. We've also gone from a centralized system to being more localized. So how would you say devolution is affecting lifelong learning, skills and adult education?
I mean, in my view, I think that devolution has the potential to be a real kind of enabler of change, because it allows skills provision to become more closely aligned with local economic need, and I think that is really a good thing. And I think what we're already seeing across devolved areas is a stronger focus on sector-specific programs linked to local growth priorities. So, linked to the jobs in people's areas and in people's, that are on people's doorsteps. And also, provision design by local employers, which means that, as people are being trained, the skills that they're developing are going to move them into employment in their local area. And I think there's more targeted support for priority groups and communities in local areas as well. So I think we'll see growth in programs that are, more employment focused, more flexible and modular, and really closely tied to job outcomes as well. I do think there's a bit of a balance to strike, though. I think one of the risks, and we see this at NCFE, is devolution can sort of create a bit of fragmentation as well. So where different regions develop very different approaches, it can create confusion sometimes for learners and employers, especially those operating across multiple areas. And I think certainly, from an NCFE perspective, it creates a role for organisations like ours to ensure that there's consistency of quality and portability of qualifications.
Yeah, portability is key.
Yeah. Really important. It's something that is developed or delivered in one area needs to be portable into another region as well. So I think it's really important, so that clear nationally recognised standards needs to kind of be upheld as well.
Yeah, Skills England talking about a one language of skills, and that portability is key, because like large employers, they're going to be in different regions. Do you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
they need to have those different areas coming in. I could talk to you forever on this, Suzanne, but I think we should probably get our guests in. So I'm going to bring in Sam and Mark. Hey Sam, hey Mark, how are you?
Morning, I'm good, thank you very much.
Morning.
I've done loads of asking the questions. Suzanne, I don't know if you wanted to take the lead with kicking off with the guests, if you want to.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gavin. First question really is over to Mark. So, Mark, what are the biggest barriers you see in preventing adults from engaging in learning, I suppose particularly mid-career, and where the system's falling short? And also, has devolution added an extra kind of layer of complexity to this as well?
Okay, and hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, can you go?
Good stuff. I mean, morning, everyone. I mean, Suzanne, you mentioned this up front. Really, it's the fact that the system is built around learning and learning pathways that take you through school, college, early life, and it's not necessarily kind of normalized as part of a sort of 40-year working life. So that's essentially the main system barrier. And of course, within that, we've got lots of other issues which are well recognized and have been identified in the Auger review. They're featured in the two skills white papers we've subsequently had since the Auger review. So the rhetoric is there. The understanding of what the barriers are is there, and it's not just in England and the UK. This is a kind of, it's a global, globally recognized issue. So you've got a clear problem around funding. You've got, if you're a working adult, you've got a number of practical issues to contend with in terms of, how do you find the time if you've got work and caring pressures? And then there's that confidence thing you were talking about. If you didn't have a particularly positive experience earlier on in life with learning, it's like, what's the kind of motivation in order to sort of make you want to enter that world again? And even if you do, if you kind of summon that up within yourself, it's like, well, how do I navigate this landscape? Because it's complicated. So, you're going to have difficulty identifying courses. The labour market signals are not particularly strong. And within that, very difficult to identify what's the right course for me. Where am I going to get sort of the best return on whatever it is that I invest in myself, whether it's money or time? And adult careers, again, is a particular weakness within our system. It's not sufficient to have an online adult careers service and something that's embedded within Job Centre Plus, because that just signals unemployment.
Yeah.
So if you're in work, you're not really going to come within the orbit of Job Centre Plus, and the vast majority of adults are in work. So the whole careers advice issue or service has been long recognised, but we've never really done anything about it. We've talked about it, we've recognised it, but we're not really acted on it. And where we have acted, it's not in an optimal way. So I think there's a number of things there. I mean, employers over the years, over the decades, in actual fact, have become less likely to take an interest in workforce development, investing in skills, because in the past it was much easier to import labour from anywhere. Not so much now. And the sort of loan-led, supply-led aspect of our system doesn't share the risk. So most of it falls on the learner. If they want to improve their skills, if they want to gain some form of qualification, the onus and the risk largely, certainly in higher education, falls on them. And we've got to find a more effective way of kind of aligning that risk between the individual, the state, and the employer moving forward. And that, I think, is one way in which devolution can perhaps start to innovate that on the ground. The scope for devolved areas to start thinking about how do we make this work in a way that might be more difficult at a national level. But that said, what is actually devolved in terms of skills at this moment in time is minimal. So the funding, the powers, and the levers are not really in the right place in order to kind of join this up and make it work.
It's a really interesting point, actually, around careers advice and guidance support being within Job Centre Plus, where it's not in the same orbit as someone who's already in the place of work. They're not going to be sort of thinking of that. It's a really, really good point. And the funding levers sitting mainly with the learner, who probably doesn't see themselves as a learner yet, as someone who wants to sort of do a career change. It's really interesting. Sam, can I bring you in, because you've had a really interesting career journey yourself? Can we do a little bit of an overview as what were the drivers for you? How was it? And where are you at now, really? So what were the sort of barriers that you come across, and how did you sort of get to where you are? Because it's kind of interesting to be able to see that from a first person perspective, basically.
Mm-hmm. Morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Right, I'll do a bit of an overview really of my career journey, and then I'll go into the bits on the why and where I'm currently at. So my career journey, really, I would describe it as of about a year ago, I was a career academic. By that, I mean, I've always been in university. I did my degree, I did my master's, I actually did a doctorate as well in transferable skills of law graduates, funnily enough. And then I pursued becoming a lecturer in law and policing. Throughout the time of my doctoral studies as a PhD student, I was also an aerial instructor, an aerial fitness instructor at a local studio. That was something that I was just doing for about an hour on a Saturday morning, just for fun, just to keep me fit. It was a hobby more than anything. And I gave that up when I started lecturing. A few years into the lecturing role then, although on paper I was doing really well, I was progressing, I was doing quite well as a lecturer, quite honestly, the bureaucracies of the higher education sector started to weigh me down, and I started to feel quite frustrated for some of the reasons that Mark was talking about. So the onus being on the learner when it comes to higher education, there's a lack of appreciation of what those learners' actual personal lives might be. And as a lecturer, I felt like there wasn't much that I could do to support my learners the way that I would have wanted to because of the policies, the bureaucracies that were in place in the sector itself. At that point in time, so this was about summer 2024, I felt like I just needed an outlet, really. I was getting quite frustrated in where I was in the higher education sector. So I started to train aerial again, and a few months later, I started to put some aerial classes on at a local gym. And again, this was just a hobby, something I was doing on Sunday mornings. That started to grow over time, though. I had some kids classes, I had some adult classes, and I actually saw a little community starting to grow through my classes. And that started to give me a bit of a sense of purpose, a bit of a sense of accomplishment, really, with what I was doing, although it was just a hobby. And I really enjoyed the coaching aspect of it, because what I was lacking from lecturing in terms of actually being involved in their lives and their journey, their morale and things like that, I felt like I was getting that from the coaching. About a year ago then, I made the decision to leave lecturing to pursue what started off as my passion project on a more serious basis. And although it was really scary, I did think, you know what, I've done a PhD on transferable skills. Let's just put that to the test and see what that looks like for me. That's where I am currently. I left lecturing about a year ago to do another role that gave me a bit more flexibility to start growing the business. As of about a month ago, I have been doing fitness full-time.
Oh,
it's really commendable, Sam, to hear, you know, what you've done and what you've achieved and how you've had such a change in that career journey as well. What would you say were the kind of biggest challenges that you faced along the way? And did you kind of look or get any support or skills that made a huge difference to you?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge really overall was trying to establish or start or found a business in a very competitive fitness sector. And that's very, very different from working for university. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of, public engagement and things like that, skills that, or things that I just had no experience with prior to doing this. Even things like how you use social media, how you're replying, how you speaking to people, when you're speaking to people. Being a lecturer in university, we're out of hours on a weekend, reply to emails on a Monday morning. When you're doing a business, your clients will want to engage with you on a weekend, and those are things that took a bit of getting used to. So the lack of experience itself was quite challenging. What I found to be quite useful was doing some sector-specific qualifications. So I started off with my Active IQ qualifications, my gym instructor qualification, and my personal trainer qualification. Those were good starting points to get some insight on being self-employed and also the fitness industry. But more than anything, really, what was really helpful was getting some very targeted mentoring. So I got some formal mentoring through a Northeast business initiative from the owner of the gym where I started my aerial classes from. So that had gone on for a couple of months. So that was some formal mentoring that was really insightful. But also, there were many other studio owners in the area that I had reached out to when I'd come across stumbling blocks that I didn't know about. So things like insurance or safeguarding policies and things like, hire agreements and stuff like that. So getting those nuggets of wisdom from more experienced people was something that's been really, really useful and valuable for me. Surprisingly enough, actually, some of the skills from lecturing has also been really transferable to both coaching and being a business owner. So things like communicating with people, managing expectations, their morale, providing feedback, even things like public speaking, I feel like are some of the skills that have gone or have been really helpful, quite surprisingly, in this very strange career change from two very different sectors.
Oh, that's really cool. Mark, can I loop you in? Because that's interesting, Sam, to be able to hear that sort of hear that journey. This is a journey that's happening across the world. So we're looking at it locally. We're looking at this for people everywhere. Yeah, I was in Singapore like a couple of years ago. They were talking about they were calling it mid-career, midlife changes for people that are doing career changes and looking at lifelong learning. And what Sam was mentioning there was that dual life. Existing job, then doing that transfer training, moving it increases the speed and the responsibilities that Sam's sort of taken on. Looking at it from a policy on a practical way, what could we be sort of thinking and doing to better support more adults with retraining, reskilling? Because there's a lot for them to juggle there, if you know what I mean, and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it all plays into the future of work and what it is that we can't precisely forecast at this moment in time. What we do know is that it will be different, but the models predominantly that we currently have fit the past. So modular, more flexible, smaller units of learning is clearly makes sense in the context of people having to upskill, reskill. But also in terms of jobs not quite being for life, not doing the same thing through life, having that kind of vertical progression within the same sector or industry, and the possibility and probability that most people will have portfolio careers, that they will do different things simultaneously, and that they will need different skill sets and generic skill sets that kind of fits across all of this. And obviously we know with the introduction of AI into all of our working lives in one capacity or another, that's something that we're going to have to embrace.
Yeah, 100%. And like Rebecca's actually come in with a really interesting point that Sam raised around mentoring, actually, around looking at like different areas and to be able to help people be able to come in with capacity with that as well. But I just thought I'd just slam that in because Rebecca's making some interesting points there, really. Looking at what you were doing, Sam, like Mark's mentioned, short duration courses, mentoring. What next? So how are you continuing? It's not just one and done for career changes and stuff like that. How are you sort of looking to continue and to better progress? Because you're talking about entrepreneurship skills as well, and that is forever ongoing when you run a small business. Do you know what I mean? Hopefully, then becomes a medium to large business. And like what sort of next steps are you sort of looking at, and what else can sort of people be thinking of or how to support that?
I think one of the things, I believe it was Rebecca who left that comment about my career being a very squiggly one. I thought that was a very interesting description, actually, because it has been a squiggly one. And I think earlier, as part of the conversation, when you talked about early years education, early years skills, it is very different. I think quite early on in our lives, we commit to, this is the career path that I'm going to go down. I'm going to be a lecturer, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be an engineer, whatever it is. And then you put in that investment of years and money, and it takes a long time to train in those professions. And then coming out of it becomes really very difficult as well. So mine has been squiggly because after that, almost a decade of investing in becoming a lecturer and getting the qualifications for it and so on and so forth, to now move away from that is quite tricky. As for next steps then for myself, so like I said, as of about a month ago, I have been doing fitness full time. I would like to keep growing this. However, fitness is something that is very taxing in terms of, physically, in terms of the time demands. It's not something that you can do 9 to 5 non-stop. It's something where you might do for a couple of hours in the morning, a couple hours in the evening, maybe on the weekends. But what happens then when you want to go away? What happens then when you get injured? What happens then when, you have young children? What do you do? It doesn't give me the security that lecturing gave me. So my next step now, with this being something that's quite new to me, is perhaps scalability. So what can I take online? What courses can I put online for clients? How do I get online clients, online programming? So that might be my first step. And that's going to take a lot of learning as well for me. And figuring things out. But I would also like to have something that's going to give me a bit more security alongside the fitness. So if I could find something that's, a part-time role that goes in hand with the fitness. So this might be things like, I still love learning. I still love researching. I still do like a lot of things that I did in lecturing. So things like building courses, for example, whether that be in the fitness industry or some other industry. I am scoping out jobs in those areas that I could do part-time, alongside what I'm doing in the fitness industry as well.
Yeah, no, interesting. I think it goes back to what Suzanne was saying around the importance of portability of skills, because your squiggly career we talk about there is, academic, law, then going into fitness, then looking at, course development, going back and around, and it's that portability of skills, and also people understanding the currency of qualification. People only want to do something they understand what it is, and the employers or the individual values it, because that's coming from an SME basis for you, Sam, but also for a larger or another SME. Like, you're going to have quals that you understand. I know what that is. So Mark, anything to sort of take out on sort of portability of skills there, or, and the importance of how this sort of pans?
Only to say that yes, this is clearly the future, and this is the direction we need to be moving in, and we are taking very small steps in that direction in a journey of 1,000 miles. But I think we need to kind of move quicker because we're behind the curve, and that kind of gap is going to widen if we don't really, sort of accelerate the need to match supply and demand for skills across our economy. Because really, it just comes down to the fundamental question in the end. It's like, what's our skill system for? What is our education system for?
Yeah.
And if it's not fit for purpose, and there's lots of arguments to suggest that it's not, then really we really do need to grasp that. And so the modular, the portability is a key feature of all of this. I think in the local context, we probably spent too much time agonizing about how do you transfer academic credit from one institution to another. But for most adults, if we're talking about adults, they'll do their learning in the place where they live, in the place where they work, in the place where they've got families. And so their movement is less exaggerated. They're not going to up sticks and go to another part of the country in order to do a course. So that transferability of credit is a very easy, practical thing to solve if you've got partners working within the same labor market. So I would just like to see more energy and speed in this space, really, and less resistance to some of the real kind of challenges that we face.
Yeah, 100%. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but Suzanne, like you're working across all regions. Do you know what I mean, and stuff like that. You're seeing, national, local. What are you sort of seeing as the way forward, the trends in portability of skills at the moment?
I think at the moment, I think we're still operating in a kind of a national system-led approach, and I think devolution is going to help that, definitely. I think at the moment where there is portability with qualifications, but I think as we move to a more modular approach, I think we need to look at how people are able, well, one, that there's credibility with those more modular, whether they're qualifications or CPD or bite-sized pieces of learning. So there needs to be the quality element to that, and the credibility that's recognised by employers as well. But obviously that portability element is key as well. I think it's something we need to look at is a system. I think we still operate in silos, if you like. So we know we need more modular, portable qualifications, but the funding doesn't necessarily support that at the moment. So I think it's a whole system approach that's needed. If we were to tear it up and say, we're going to design an adult skills system, we certainly wouldn't design what we had at the moment. So
yeah, 100%. We've got like a minute left. So if you used to be able to change one thing to be able to make adult education, lifelong learning more accessible, more easy, more portable, what would it be, Mark?
I appreciate the question, Gavin, but I mean, I suppose the conversation is systemic, isn't it? We've identified that it's really lots of things that need taken together. But I suppose if I had to punt for one thing, the lifelong learning entitlement will be introduced in January, and I would like to see that to incorporate much smaller modules other than 30 credit courses. Give it a go with test it out with micro credentials. Go down to 10 credits if you like, and enable institutions to make those credits up from even smaller pieces, just to try this out in a proper way.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Singapore method is best lifelong learning system in the world, so there's obviously lessons to be learned from there.
Yeah,
SSD.
exactly.
Sam, we have a couple of seconds left. What would you want to see for removing the barrier or unlocking lifelong learning?
Yeah, I think this ties in a little bit to what Mark said earlier about, the transfer of credits from one university to another. That's a really small part of the issue. I think a wider thing for me, and this is now perhaps my current lived experience of applying for jobs that are outside the higher education sector, is again, systemic issue, but a greater appreciation for transferable qualifications and transferable skills from one sector to another. That's something that I feel has been a massive stumbling block for me. I've got a silly amount of qualifications at level 7, level 8, all of that. And then when I'm applying for jobs sometimes, so even some teaching roles or some assessment roles, you don't have the right qualification for assessing or the right qualification that we want for this sector in particular. And you're thinking, right, to now retrain, who will pay for that course and how will that go when it's probably going to be the same or very similar set of skills, where what Mark is talking about, a 5-credit course or a 10-credit course, might actually be the solution for that, something that can be done over a couple of weeks or months as opposed to a 9-month apprenticeship to get another new course. So that would be perhaps what I think would make or support lifelong learning journeys much more sustainable.
Yeah, no, really, really cool point. Thank you, everyone. We've gone over a bit, so sorry, everyone. We've gone over. It's such an important topic for everyone. Yeah, we're all going to be looking at new ways that we're going to be looking at lifelong learning and ways that we're looking for ourselves, let alone those that we're trying to support. So thank you so much for joining us today. Next week is the season finale, actually, and we've mentioned it a few times. Actually, we're looking at AI, automation, and the skills reset. So join us on Thursday at 10, and we've got a really cool show there. But Suzanne, thank you. Mark, thank you. Sam, thank you so much. We see you all next week. And thanks a lot for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.